Shockingly, the royal palace turned into chaos when the former Queen Camilla slapped the new Queen Anne in front of the entire royal guard. But what happened next changed the monarchy forever. A single guard's decision ended centuries of silence, exposed hidden power, and revealed a truth no one was ready for. Watch till the end, like this video, and subscribe for more unbelievable royal revelations. The bells of Windsor did not ring that morning. The sky above the palace was heavy with a pale fog that refused to lift, swallowing the towers and hiding the flags that usually danced in the wind. Inside, the halls were still. Even the portraits seemed to hold their breath. For the first time in years, silence carried more weight than ceremony. Captain Elias Harrow, commander of the Royal Guard, stood in the State Gallery, his gloved hands resting behind his back. His duty had always been simple: protect the crown, serve with honor, and never question the throne. Yet on that morning, everything he had believed about loyalty was about to change. King Charles lay unconscious in his private chamber, his condition still uncertain after a sudden collapse the night before. Under Clause 5 of the Regency Act, Princess Anne had been sworn in as temporary sovereign. She carried herself with quiet strength, not for power, but for the people who needed stability. The guards had gathered for her first formal address as acting queen. Elias had served through 3 reigns, but something about this moment felt different. Anne's calm presence reminded him of the late queen, measured, thoughtful, and sincere. As she stepped forward to speak, the heavy oak doors at the end of the gallery burst open. Camilla entered, unannounced, her steps sharp against the marble. Her eyes were fierce, not with grief but defiance. No one dared to move. Not a single guard had received an order to stop her, and yet every man felt the tension rising like a tide. She walked straight toward the dais where Anne stood, her voice echoing across the hall. "That crown," she said coldly, "was never meant for you." The room froze. Elias felt the air leave his lungs. No one spoke, no one moved. It was treason to interrupt a ceremony. Yet here she was, the former queen consort, challenging the new sovereign before witnesses. Anne did not reply. She simply turned her gaze to the assembled guards, a quiet signal that order must be maintained. But then, in one shocking instant, Camilla lifted her hand and struck Anne across the face. The sound of that slap shattered the silence. The queen staggered back slightly but did not fall. Her crown tilted, her composure did not. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. And then, before hesitation could spread like poison, Elias acted. He stepped forward, voice steady and clear. By order of Crown Statute 12b, any act of assault upon the sovereign, temporary or sworn, is punishable by immediate detainment. Camilla's eyes widened. "You would arrest me?" "Yes, Your Grace," Elias said, his tone firm but respectful. "For the honor of the crown, I must." The guards surrounded her with practiced precision. There was no violence, no shouting, only the rustle of uniforms and the soft clink of ceremonial chains. For the first time in her life, Camilla found herself powerless. Anne did not command it. She simply lowered her gaze, touching her cheek lightly. "Let the law speak," she whispered. "Not vengeance." As Camilla was escorted away, Elias felt the weight of his oath settle heavily on his chest. Loyalty, he realized, was not about faces or titles. It was about the truth. And that truth demanded courage, even when it broke your heart. Outside, the fog thickened, curling around the palace gates. Crowds had gathered, whispering rumors of betrayal and justice. The press waited at the edge of the courtyard, but the royal signal had gone out. No statements, no coverage, no spectacle. The story would unfold behind stone walls, where duty was stronger than emotion. In his private office later that morning, Elias removed his gloves and stared at his reflection in the small mirror above the desk. His face was calm, but his hands trembled slightly. He knew history had just shifted. The monarchy had seen wars, scandals, and sorrow, but never had a guard been forced to arrest a royal. When he closed his eyes, he could still hear Anne's words. "Let the law speak." They echoed like a promise, or perhaps a warning. By nightfall, Camilla was moved to the East Tower under royal security detail. The world outside would not know the full truth for days, perhaps weeks. Inside the palace, whispers grew louder. some calling Elias a hero, others a traitor. But he did not seek praise. He had simply done what was right. The next morning, when the sun finally broke through the fog, Elias stood again at his post. The crown had been placed back upon its cushion, untouched and gleaming under the soft light. Queen Anne passed him quietly, pausing for a brief moment. "Captain," she said softly, "the crown remains because of men like you." He bowed deeply, not as a soldier, but as a man who had seen the line between power and honor drawn with painful clarity. That day marked the beginning of something larger than a scandal. It was the rebirth of integrity within the monarchy. And for the first time, the people would see a new kind of strength in their queen, and the guard who chose justice over fear. The dawn after Camilla's arrest was unlike any other in Windsor's long history. The palace, usually alive with polished rituals and formal voices, now moved in whispers. Every servant, every officer, every advisor felt the same chill, the kind that comes when silence carries more danger than sound. Captain Elias Harrow had not slept. The weight of the previous day pressed against his chest like a shield he could not put down. He had done his duty, yet the echo of Camilla's defiant eyes haunted him. She had not cried nor pleaded. When the guards led her through the corridor of portraits, she had walked as though she still ruled them all. Inside the royal court chamber, Queen Anne stood by the window overlooking the fog-soaked gardens. Her reflection on the glass looked tired but unbroken. The early sunlight caught the faint bruise on her cheek, the silent mark of yesterday's storm. She turned as Elias entered, her calm gaze resting on him. "Captain," she said, her voice low but firm, "you acted with honor." "Your Majesty," Elias replied, bowing slightly. "I acted with law." "Law is only words until someone gives them life," Anne said. "Yesterday you gave them strength." Elias said nothing. His loyalty did not require gratitude, but her words struck deeper than praise. He had worn his uniform through years of service, but never had it felt so heavy, so human. At that moment, the chief advisor entered, carrying a sealed report from the Royal Council. "Your Majesty," he said, "there are concerns from Parliament. They demand clarity regarding the former Queen Consort's detainment." Anne's gaze did not waver. "They will have it," she said, "but not before the crown has its peace." When the advisor left, she turned to Elias again. "The world will ask why you arrested her. They will question your authority, your intent. They may even try to turn the people against you. You must be ready for that," Elias nodded. "My oath is to the crown, not to comfort." Anne smiled faintly, though her eyes betrayed the burden she carried. "Then the crown is in good hands." Later that morning, Elias walked the long marble corridors toward the East Tower. The guards on duty saluted him as he passed. Inside, the light was dim. The East Tower had been closed to the public for decades, a quiet wing reserved for matters the world never needed to see. Two guards stood outside the chamber door. Elias gave the nod and the lock clicked open. Camilla sat by the window, dressed in a simple grey gown, her expression unreadable. The contrast between her royal past and her present confinement was sharp as glass. "So," she said with a thin smile, "they send the man who caged me." "I came to ensure you are treated with respect," Elias said evenly. "Respect," she repeated, her tone like ice. "You speak of respect after you stripped me of dignity in front of my own court." "You broke the oath of the crown," Elias replied. "No title excuses treason." Her laugh was short and bitter. "Treason? You think this was about the throne? You think I care for the crown? That woman, Anne, was never meant to sit there. You will understand soon enough, Captain. You are guarding a secret no one dares to speak," Elias frowned. "What secret?" Camilla turned away from him, her eyes fixed on the grey horizon. "Ask her about Clause 12. Ask her why it was never revoked." Before he could respond, she rose and stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You believe in justice. I can see that. But tell me, Captain, what if justice was built on a lie?" Her words stayed with him as he left the tower. The phrase Clause 12 repeated in his mind like a bell that refused to stop ringing. He returned to his office and opened the old statute compendium, a leather-bound archive of every royal law. There, buried among hundreds of pages, he found it. Crown Statute 12, a dormant clause allowing the sovereign to name a hidden successor, one whose identity could remain sealed until the death or permanent incapacity of the reigning monarch. His blood ran cold. Was that what Camilla meant? Was Queen Anne not the true heir under that secret clause? Or was Camilla lying to sow division? That evening, as the sun melted behind the castle walls, Elias stood at the courtyard's edge. The people outside were already gathering with torches and questions. Some shouted for justice for Anne, others demanded mercy for Camilla. The kingdom was dividing not in battle but in belief. Inside, Queen Anne summoned him once again. Her expression was grave. "Captain," she said quietly, "you must never open the sealed archive in the lower vault. Its contents are for the sovereign alone." Elias met her gaze. "Does it contain Clause 12? Her silence was his answer. At that moment, Elias realized the truth was larger than any arrest. The palace was not only guarding a queen, it was guarding a secret powerful enough to shake the throne itself. As he walked away, the echo of her words followed him down the corridor. For the sovereign alone. But deep in his heart, Elias knew that when truth is hidden behind walls of power, someone must be brave enough to open the door, and soon he would. The palace library was silent, the kind of silence that only history could command. Dust hung like slow snowflakes in the golden light filtering through tall windows. Captain Elias Harrow sat alone at a long oak table, the Crown Statute compendium open before him. Every page seemed to breathe secrets. His eyes traced the faded ink of Clause 12 again and again, as if reading it one more time might change what it said. In the event of incapacity or abdication of the reigning sovereign, succession may be transferred to the designated heir as declared in sealed writ by royal hand and witnessed under the Crown Chamber. The writ shall remain sealed until invoked by necessity. The words were legal, dry, yet heavy with consequence. Elias had sworn his life to protect the sovereign. But if a sealed heir existed, someone hidden by royal decree, then his loyalty had been divided without his knowledge. He leaned back, feeling the ache in his chest. Camilla's words returned to him. "You are guarding a secret no one dares to speak." What if she had not been defiant? What if she had been warning him? Outside, a light rain began to fall, tapping gently against the window panes. Elias closed the book and stood, his reflection wavering in the glass. The truth was out there, somewhere behind locked doors and royal silence, and he needed to find it, not for power, but for peace of conscience. That afternoon, he requested access to the lower vault, where the sealed royal archives were kept. The request was denied within an hour. The denial bore the Queen's personal seal. That alone told him more than words ever could. By dusk, he was standing once again outside the East Tower. The guards at the door looked uneasy. One of them spoke quietly. "Captain, the former Queen has refused her meals." "She asked to see you again." Elias hesitated. Then he nodded. 5 minutes. When he entered, Camilla was seated near the window, her face pale but composed. She looked at him not as a prisoner, but as a woman who had seen the weight of truth destroy stronger men. "You read it, did you not?" she asked softly. "I did," Elias said. "Clause 12 exists," she smiled faintly. "Then you understand? The crown you protect rests on a secret built by men long dead. You think this is about me striking her? No, Captain. This is about what she hides beneath her crown." "Enough," Elias said firmly. "You speak in riddles. If you have something to say it plainly." "Very well," she said. "King Charles signed that sealed writ 2 years ago. Not for Anne, for another." Elias's pulse quickened. "Who?" "His grandson," she said, her voice trembling. "George, the child of the late princess." He froze. "That cannot be. The boy is too young to reign." Camilla's gaze was unwavering. "Too young, yes. But the law allows for regency until maturity. Anne invoked Clause 5 to act as regent, but not as queen. She took more than the law gave her." Elias felt the floor tilt beneath him. If Camilla spoke the truth, then the entire foundation of the new reign was unlawful. But could he believe her? She had every reason to lie, and yet her voice carried no malice, only sorrow. "Why tell me this?" he asked, Because you still believe in justice, she said. And justice dies in silence. When Elias left the chamber, his thoughts were a storm. The corridors of Windsor seemed narrower, the walls closer. Every step echoed louder than the last. He passed portraits of monarchs who had ruled with honor, but behind every frame, he now saw shadows. That night, he returned to his quarters and found a small envelope slipped under his door. No seal, no name. Only 3 words written in clean handwriting. The vault opens tonight. He froze, staring at the message. No one but a handful of people even knew where the vault was. If this was a trap, it was well placed. But if it was not, then the chance to uncover the truth had arrived. At midnight, dressed in his dark uniform and cloak, Elias descended into the lower corridors. The torches flickered along the cold stone walls. The air was thick with the scent of age and secrecy. When he reached the heavy iron door of the royal vault, he found it slightly ajar. Inside, only one lantern burned, casting long shadows across shelves of sealed documents. In the center stood a single chest marked with the royal insignia of King Charles. Elias approached slowly, his heart pounding. The lock had already been broken. Someone had been there before him. As he lifted the lid, his breath caught. Inside lay a single parchment, sealed in red wax. The same emblem as the crown, the same mark he had seen on royal decrees. But beside it was something else, a small letter addressed not to Anne, not to Parliament, but to Captain Elias Harrow. His hands trembled as he broke the seal. The handwriting was unmistakable, King Charles himself. If you are reading this, it means the time of silence has ended. Protect the truth, Elias, even if it destroys the crown. A sound behind him made him spin. Footsteps. A shadow moved across the stone wall. Someone else was there. Before he could speak, the lantern was struck, and darkness swallowed the room. The truth, it seemed, was ready to fight back. The lantern crashed to the stone floor, its flame dying with a hiss. Darkness closed in like a living thing. Captain Elias Harrow froze where he stood, every muscle tight. The vault was silent except for the echo of fading footsteps. Whoever had been there had vanished into the shadows. For a moment he could hear only the sound of his heartbeat, heavy and fast. He bent down, fingers brushing the cold floor until they found the fallen letter again, the one bearing King Charles's signature. He tucked it safely into his coat, then drew his pistol. The corridors of Windsor were ancient, and beneath them ran tunnels few still remembered. If someone knew he had read the letter, then the hunt had already begun. He moved through the underground passageways, his boots soundless against the stone. The air was damp, the smell of age strong. Each turn brought him closer to the stairway leading to the main gallery. But as he reached the final bend, he saw the faint glow of a lantern ahead. A figure stood waiting. It was not a threat. It was the Queen. Anne held the lantern steady, her face pale in the flickering light. "You should not be here, Captain," she said quietly. With respect. "Your Majesty," Elias replied, standing tall. "Neither should you." Her eyes, calm but weary, lingered on his coat pocket where the corner of the royal parchment peeked out. "You found it," she said softly. "He left it for you." "Why?" Elias asked. "Why me, of all people?" "Because he trusted you," Anne said. "And because he knew I would not destroy what he built." Elias stepped closer, the torchlight catching the edge of the letter. "Then you know what this means," he said. Clause 12, the sealed heir. Anne's voice grew steady, her tone that of a ruler who carried more than she could say. "Yes, I know. The writ names the boy George, but the world is not ready for another child on the throne, not again. The last time a regency was declared, the kingdom nearly tore itself apart. I did what I had to do to keep peace. Peace built on silence is not peace," Elias said firmly. "It is only waiting for war." For the first time, emotion cracked her voice. "Do you think I wanted this, Captain? To rule under my brother's shadow? To be called a usurper by those who do not understand what is at stake? I acted to protect the child, not to steal his birthright." Elias studied her face, saw the truth behind her words, the exhaustion, the sorrow, the loneliness of power. He wanted to believe her, but he had read the letter. King Charles's words were clear. Protect the truth, even if it destroys the crown. The truth will come out, Your Majesty, Elias said quietly. And when it does, the people will not forgive silence. She lowered her gaze. Then I will bear that, as I have borne everything else. Before he could respond, the sound of boots echoed down the corridor. Multiple pairs moving fast. Anne turned toward the noise, her face tightening. They know, she whispered. Someone has spoken. Elias drew his weapon again. Go, Your Majesty. Back to your chambers. I will not run from my own guard, she said. This is not about fear, he replied. It is about survival. The noise grew louder. Torches appeared at the far end of the corridor. A dozen guards, led by Lord Chancellor Merton, the Queen's political advisor. His expression was hard, his voice colder than the stones. Captain Harrow, Merton said sharply, you are under investigation for treason. You entered the sealed vault without authorization and removed protected documents. Hand them over at once, Elias stood firm. By whose order? By mine, Merton replied. Signed by Her Majesty this morning. Anne's eyes widened. That is impossible. I signed nothing. Perhaps you should not have trusted your ink to every hand in this palace, Merton said with a smirk. Now step aside. Both of you. The torches flickered as tension filled the air. Elias positioned himself slightly before the Queen. The vault was already opened when I arrived, he said calmly. Whoever broke it wanted this letter to be found, and they wanted chaos to follow. Merton's lips curled. And you think waving a piece of paper will save you? Elias held up the royal parchment. This paper is the king's final order. It bears his mark and his words. If I am guilty, then I stand guilty of obeying my sovereign. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Anne stepped forward, her voice like steel. Enough. Captain Harrow serves under my command. Anyone who lays a hand on him answers to me. Merton's smirk faded. So be it, he said finally. But understand this. Every word that leaves that vault could destroy the monarchy you claim to protect. He turned and signaled his men to withdraw. The guards hesitated, then obeyed. Their footsteps faded into the distance, leaving Anne and Elias alone again. Elias turned to her. You must decide, Your Majesty. If you choose silence, the truth will consume the crown. If you choose truth, it may destroy everything else. She looked past him, toward the dark passage where the guards had disappeared. And if I choose neither? She asked. Then someone else will choose for you, Elias said. That night thunder rolled across Windsor's skies. The palace slept uneasily, the rain striking the windows like restless hands. In his quarters, Elias sat at his desk, the letter spread before him. He traced the king's words once more, knowing they would soon demand a price. He glanced toward the window where lightning flashed over the towers. Somewhere in the east tower, Camilla waited, her silence heavier than the storm. Somewhere in the upper chambers, Queen Anne wrestled with a choice that would define history. And somewhere beneath the crown, truth waited, patient, unyielding, and ready to rise. Rain pounded against the palace walls through the long night, washing over the stone towers like a river that refused to stop. Windsor stood tall, but within its walls the kingdom trembled. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one building within. Captain Elias Harrow had not slept. The king's letter lay open on his desk, its words echoing in his mind. Protect the truth, even if it destroys the crown. He read it again and again until the ink blurred beneath his weary eyes. He had sworn an oath to defend the sovereign. Now, that oath demanded he expose her. Every sound in the corridor made him tense. The palace, once his home of discipline and order, now felt like a battlefield where every whisper was a weapon. At dawn, he was summoned to the Grand Hall. The Queen's Council had called an emergency assembly. The matter, his conduct, and the future of the throne. When Elias entered, the vast chamber was already filled. Ministers, advisors, and members of the royal guard stood in grim silence. At the far end, Queen Anne sat on the throne, her expression unreadable. Chancellor Merton stood beside her, holding a folder of documents, likely his so-called evidence. Merton began, his tone sharp and rehearsed. Captain Harrow stands accused of unauthorized access to the royal vault and theft of sealed state property. These are acts punishable under Crown Law 41. Elias stepped forward. I did not steal. I recovered a document that was already compromised. The vault was open before I arrived. Convenient, Merton said coldly. And this document, You claim it came from His Majesty himself. It bears his seal and his words, Elias replied. Merton smiled thinly. Then present it. The room went still. Elias looked toward Queen Anne. Her gaze met his, steady and sorrowful. Slowly, he placed the letter on the table before them. Merton unfolded it, eyes scanning the page. Then he frowned. This is not complete, he said. What do you mean? Anne asked. The letter ends abruptly. The final paragraph is missing. Someone has torn it away. A ripple of shock moved through the hall. Elias stepped closer. That cannot be. When I found it, it was whole. Then where is the rest, Captain? Merton sneered. Lost, perhaps? Or hidden? Anne's voice cut through the murmurs. Enough. Captain Harrow's integrity is not in question. He has served this crown longer than any man in this room. But even as she spoke, doubt shadowed her eyes. Elias saw it. She was torn between the truth that haunted her and the order that held her throne. Merton bowed. As your Majesty commands. But if this missing section resurfaces, I fear its words may speak louder than ours. When the assembly ended, Anne dismissed everyone except Elias. The doors closed behind the last guard, leaving them alone beneath the high ceilings. You believe Merton took it? She asked quietly. I do, Elias said. He was the first to arrive when I found the vault open. Someone wanted this letter altered before I saw it. Anne's hands trembled slightly as she folded the partial letter. Then the truth may already be in his hands. And he will use it when the time suits him. Elias hesitated before speaking. There is more, Your Majesty. The former queen claims the clause was never revoked, that you invoked the regency to protect the boy, but never declared the heir publicly. Anne looked toward the stained glass window, where sunlight began to pierce through storm clouds. Camilla speaks half-truths. She always did, but she is not entirely wrong. The document of succession remains sealed. Only 2 people have seen it, my brother and myself. Then why not release it now? Elias asked. Let the truth speak before others twist it. Her voice dropped. Because if the truth is revealed, the council will strip me of the regency, and Parliament will take control of the child. The boy will become a symbol, not a person. I will not see another generation used by politics. Elias understood. Her silence was not for greed, it was for protection. Yet he also knew the longer the truth stayed buried, the more dangerous it became. That evening, as the sun sank low, Elias returned to the East Tower. Camilla awaited him once again, calm as ever, her eyes sharp with knowledge. You stood before them today, she said. And still you choose to protect her? She is not my enemy, Elias replied. Camilla leaned forward. You are naive, Captain. The council has already begun their move. The letter you hold is their weapon. They will use your name to justify the coup they have long planned. By tomorrow they will claim the queen forged her right to the throne. Elias's jaw tightened. And you? What is it you want? Camilla's smile faded. I want the truth. Not for revenge, but because the crown must never be built on lies again. Her words struck him harder than any threat. There was no venom in her voice, only exhaustion and perhaps regret. Outside, the storm had ended, but thunder still rolled in the distance. The dawn would bring something worse than rain, an uprising within the palace walls. Elias knew the kingdom teetered on a knife's edge, and he stood at its center. He looked through the tower window, watching the clouds part over the horizon. Then it ends tomorrow, he said softly. One way or another, Camilla rose slowly. Be careful, Captain. When truth and power collide, it is never the crown that bleeds first. It is the one who dares to speak. That night, Elias sealed the letter in his uniform pocket. Knowing it was no longer just evidence, it was a weapon. And as the sun broke over Windsor's towers the next morning, the bells finally rang again, not for ceremony, but for judgment. The morning sun rose over Windsor like a blade of light, sharp and unyielding. The rain had washed the night clean, but it could not cleanse the weight that hung over the palace. For the first time in days, the bells rang again, clear, echoing through the courtyards. But they were not calling for ceremony. They were calling for judgment. Captain Elias Harrow walked through the corridor in full dress uniform, his polished boots striking the marble floor like measured thunder. Every guard who passed him saluted, not out of routine, but respect. Word had spread. Today the captain would face the Queen's council once more, not as an accused man, but as the keeper of the king's final truth. He carried no weapon, only the letter, the real one. The missing final page had been found, smuggled to him in the early dawn by a palace maid who had risked her life to deliver it. It bore the unmistakable royal signature and seal, untouched. The king's words were clear, final, and undeniable. The line of succession shall remain with my grandson George, under the protection and temporary regency of Princess Anne, until his rightful ascension. This order stands above council, law, or blood. The letter did not accuse Anne of betrayal. It confirmed her sacrifice. She had ruled not as a usurper, but as a guardian of the crown. The truth would save her, or destroy her, depending on who heard it first. As Elias entered the grand hall, every eye turned toward him. The council sat in their high seats, and at the center stood Chancellor Merton, his expression calm, almost too calm. Queen Anne was there too, dressed in mourning black, her face pale yet resolute. "Captain Harrow," Merton began, his voice echoing through the hall. "You claim to hold the final words of His Majesty. Present your evidence." Elias stepped forward and placed the parchment on the council table. "This is the king's last decree, restored to its full form. It bears his hand and seal. No alteration, no falsehood." Merton's fingers twitched. He had not expected this. "How do we know this is genuine?" "The wax," Elias replied evenly. "Pressed with the royal signet, which has never left the crown's vault. I verified it myself under the Queen's ring this morning." Anne looked at him with quiet gratitude but said nothing. Merton's composure cracked. "Then you admit you violated the vault again?" "No," Elias said, his voice cutting through the murmur. "I fulfilled my oath, to the truth and to the crown." He unfolded the letter and read aloud. The chamber fell silent as the king's final words filled the air. When he finished, no one spoke for several seconds. Even the sound of the wind outside seemed to stop. Anne rose slowly, tears bright in her eyes. "Then the truth is clear. I ruled only to protect what my brother left behind. I never sought his crown, only his peace." For the first time, Merton looked uncertain. "You think this forgives the chaos you caused?" "The kingdom is divided, Your Majesty. The people are confused." Anne's voice was steady, though her hands trembled. "Then let them see the truth and choose for themselves. I will not cling to a throne built on secrecy." She turned toward Elias. "Bring the boy." Moments later, the grand doors opened. A young child entered, no older than 10, holding the hand of his guardian. His hair caught the sunlight as he stepped forward, his small frame almost lost in the vast hall. Every person rose to their feet in silence. "This," Anne said softly, "is King George of the United Kingdom." Gasps echoed across the chamber. Elias bowed deeply, as did every guard in the hall. Merton stood frozen, realizing that his schemes had just turned to dust. Anne knelt before the child, removing the small signet ring from her finger and placing it on his palm. "Your grandfather's wish is fulfilled. May you rule with truth, not fear." Tears glistened in her eyes, but there was peace too, a kind that no crown could give. The hall erupted in applause, not of ceremony, but of relief. The storm had broken. Elias stood silently at the edge of the dais, his chest tight with emotion. He had served through lies and loyalty, through power and peril. But in that moment, he realized that real honor was not in protecting the crown. It was in protecting what it stood for. As the applause faded, Anne turned to him. "Captain Harrow," she said, "you have done what no man before you dared. You have guarded not just the throne, but the soul of this kingdom. The crown owes you more than it can ever repay." Elias bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, the crown owes me nothing. My oath was never to power, it was to truth." Later that day, as the palace gates opened to the cheering crowds, Elias stood on the balcony beside the Queen and the young king. The bells rang once more. Not for war, not for judgment, but for rebirth. Camilla, watching from the East Tower window, closed her eyes and whispered a quiet prayer. So the truth wins after all. When the celebrations ended, Elias removed his gloves and placed them on the marble ledge overlooking the courtyard. He had fulfilled his duty. For the first time in years, he felt free. As he turned to leave, the Queen's voice stopped him. "Captain," she said with a gentle smile, "will you remain by his side?" Elias looked down at the boy who would soon carry the crown. "As long as truth remains his shield," he said. "Then yes, I will." And so it was that the storm of lies gave way to the calm of honor. The monarchy endured, not through power, but through courage, the kind that stands when silence is easier and speaks when truth is hardest. If you believe that courage and honesty can rewrite even the darkest story, like this video, drop your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe for more royal tales of honor, sacrifice, and redemption, because in the end, truth is the only crown that never falls.